you've now built this brand, you've gone out on your own, you've built a really successful business, and it's all about being very personable, always being available, being there throughout the whole process, right? You are the brand, you are the business. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Airbnb Nomads podcast. And on this week's Property Education Masterclass, we're joined by the incredible Simon Taylor. Now, Simon's got a really interesting story. He spent 5 years building up his Purple Bricks franchise in East London into the biggest estate agency in East London. Realizing once he reached the ceiling within Purple Bricks that he had so much more to offer the industry, he went out by himself to build his own very luxurious and very niche estate agency in East London, and he's gone on to do incredible things. Even more impressive than that is Simon's ability to understand how to build a brand. His social media following on Instagram is now in excess of 150,000 followers and growing by almost 1,000 followers every single week. There's so much to learn here around how to build a brand. Guys, as always, if you get inspired by the show, please do follow us along and leave us a review. It helps us so much with visibility. Until then, get settled in. This is a great episode, really good fun as well. Simon's a great guy. Can't wait for you to hear it. Here we go. Simon Taylor, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me. Was flattered to have been asked, intrigued as to why I was asked and why you've picked me for this episode, given the esteemed roll call of previous guests that you've had on the show.
Well, you're a very interesting character, and I'm very attracted to people that have really engaging social media profiles as well. So I love that about you, and I also like what you do, and we're going to talk about that. So first of all, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. You got lots going on, and we're going to get into that in this episode. First thing I want to start with, Simon, is I know, or at least I think, that you're based in East London because of the business that you run, but it's pretty obvious as soon as you start talking that you're not born and bred in East London.
No, that's for sure. I guess my family, I've kind of come a wee bit full circle. So, and there's a little bit of irony, which is I've got grandparents who were Cockneys from the East End of London in the 1920s, 1930s. And my grandmother, at the outbreak of war, she was a teenager, and her family sent her during the Blitz. When the East End was getting a hammering, her parents said, we're sending you to stay with cousins in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, which she did. And my grandfather, who was in the RAF, after the war, he went over to Northern Ireland to see his pal, who was my grandmother's brother, and they fell in love. And he said, "Let's go back to London." And she says, "No, I like it here." So they moved to Belfast to escape the bombing. Is the irony there? And then I suppose I was a student in Leeds, and then the bright lights of London beckoned. But my experience in East London or me ending up in East London is very accidental. And London being such a big smoke, when I landed in London, I gravitated where I knew some people, and that was to North London. And my only ever experience of East London was going to East London on a night out to a couple of, to Hoxton or Shoreditch. I was an agency at a firm that you may know about or heard of called Purple Bricks, and I was I got into bed with them at the early days when they were doing no marketing and they were just getting the team assembled, and I was deflated in a high street estate agency, feeling like I was going a bit stale. And I inquired about Purple Bricks for North London, and they said, "Well, we're really sorry, but North London's taken. But if you want, you can have the whole of East London as a territory to look after." Which was an area that I didn't know at all. But yeah, I've East London. I got stuck into East London, and I've really, really enjoyed East London. Versus North London, it's a completely different kettle of fish. I like the housing stock, I like the people, and they're probably a little bit more my cup of tea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. So So just to let everybody know who's listening, you basically built up. You spent about 5 years, from what I've read, building Purple Bricks up to one of the biggest estate agencies in East London. Right? You absolutely, blew this thing up and started doing some incredible things, and then you started to feel like you could do more, and obviously that kind of primed you to then leave and go off and start your own estate agency, which you're doing now, and you're doing really, really well at that. And I want to talk about that in detail. First thing, Simon, not everybody knows about Purple Bricks. I know it's a little bit different to most other traditional agencies. So how did that work, and how did you go about growing it into such a massive agency in 5 years?
I can't take the credit for growing Purple Bricks as a company, because it was a PLC across the UK. But
your franchise.
Yes,
London, right?
it was a one man. It started with me as a one-man band covering. Let me backtrack. The High Street Estate Agency back in, should we say, 2012, 2013, 2014, it hadn't progressed really or moved on since the formation of Rightmove 20 odd years prior. And it was high street offices, and it was people coming in suits, and you were tied to your desk from 8:30 or earlier till 6:30, 7 o'clock until your final appointment. And there was often large gaps during the day, and you would earn a basic salary and then a percentage of commission. And it just became a little bit same old, right? And every estate agent is more or less the same as the other, more or less. And the only real tweaks are one's got a blue sign, one's got a red sign, one's got a blue car, one's got a red car, and the fees are all more or less the same. And Purple Bricks, which was founded by an ex-estate agent and his lawyer, legal brain brother, raised lots of private equity, came out with a really cool name, and said, "Screw this! Why should somebody in a one bed flat pay the same percentage fee wise as? Let me rephrase that. Why should somebody in a really expensive house pay 3 times or 4 times more than somebody in a 2-bed flat for arguably the same service?" Which is a very valid question. So it was one flat fee. It was really cool marketing. People could book in viewings online and request valuations online, or book in valuations, I should say, online, which doesn't sound that, strange now. But back then that was like, oh my God, this is just crazy. It was an industry ripe for disruption. And with a cool name, with the right trading conditions at the time, the right market conditions of the time, and no shortage of entrepreneurial type estate agents across the UK fed up and wanting something different, Purple Bricks came along for me at just the right time. I was falling out of love with the estate agency, and I thought this was a really cool company with a really cool a brand and a really cool culture of all like-minded people that were just fed up of the way things were with the status quo. Let's disrupt, let's pivot, and we were busy. To say I was busy is an understatement.
So how did it work, Simon? I've done a few viewings with Purple Bricks a while ago now, and I remember that when I went to the property to see it, I was met by someone who kind of worked for Purple Bricks but didn't. They were kind of just a local in the area that was paid per viewing or something.
Yes. So there's a contrast there between what I'm doing now, which we'll come to later. But yes, at the time, the focus was on, as us agents, was doing the valuations. Right. Valuations, drinking tea and sitting in people's living rooms and telling them all about the model and what we do and how they could save money and building that rapport. And the viewings, not all of the time, but a lot of the viewings, we were building a business. And for an agency to build a business, they just couldn't be in 3 or 4 places at once. So if you, for instance, Alex, saw that property that you're mentioning on a Saturday, chances are the actual Purple Bricks agent for that area was on a valuation round the corner, 3 roads away, whatever. So they would have people that would assist them, viewing assistants as we call them, with the viewings. And they would be self-employed, and they would be paid per hour. Now, the model has changed and pivoted to in its current format. It's a shadow of its former self. What the structure is currently there now, I'm really not too sure. I could only, should we say, talk about the structure that I experienced during my tenure for 5-6 years. And that was, we would have agents, and so that their time was as productive from a monetary perspective as possible. They were doing the valuations, and the viewings, the opening of the doors and showing people around, was done by quite often the viewing assistants that we had amongst our team. We were some mature students. There was a few musicians, a couple of actors, who were very articulate, very friendly, more than capable of having a conversation. And then, of course, when it came to the negotiations or the offers or the deeper questions, and they were able to advise when doing the viewing, they were then passed over to us as the agent.
So is Purple Brick still going? Because I think I remember reading that they was almost bankrupt, or they were.
It is, and I actually made a formal offer for Purple Bricks as a company, which I published on LinkedIn, which was £1. I offered £1 for the company, whilst the share price was in the doldrums, and that got some traction. And some people laughed at me for offering £1 for the. How can you offer £1? It's obviously worth a lot more than that. And then, circa 6 months later, it was bought for £1. By its current,
along with all the debt.
I think the vast majority of the debt was written off, and there was money on account, but that money on account was soon used up, paying off members of staff during redundancy processes. And the team that I built from a one-man band, I built it to a team of 12 agents covering East London. That's not including the viewing assistants, but there was 12 of us at our high point, taking on around 100 to 120 properties a month. So wow. We were busy, and I know that area now is being run by 1 to 2 people. So it's kind of gone up and then come all the way back down again. A high roller coaster.
So how was it pivoting then, Simon, from I guess you was a business owner already, but moving from that, having that support network of that big brand and that big support network into where you are now and starting up your own agency. Was that a scary prospect?
It was, in a way. I suppose I became unemployable. I don't know whether that's ever been discussed on your show before. Whilst I have a skill set, I'm perhaps a little bit marmite or an acquired taste, or I'm not very good at working for somebody. Having said that, it worked really well for me when I was at Purple Bricks, when the culture and the founders were running the ship. When things changed and it tried to move down a path of being more of a corporate, things didn't quite sit right for me, and that's why things came to a bit of an end for me at Purple Bricks. But you were spoilt as an estate agent at Purple Bricks in many respects. Maybe not every agent, but most, and certainly East London, because it was a profitable patch, which was based on volume. The valuations poured in. And I remember joking. I remember people would book it. You would set up your availability for valuations. You want to start at 11 o'clock on a Monday, or you want to finish at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, and maybe allow valuations to be booked in from midday on a Wednesday. You could make it up to suit your own routine and your own preferences, or working around you and your own family. But I remember joking with our team. There was 10 of us at one time at that time, and we were all flat out, and we were booked out for valuations for 2.5 weeks. That was the earliest valuation appointment you could get with our team. And we joked that we were more, it was easier to get into a fancy restaurant in the West End than it was to get a valuation with us. And we laughed at that, but and joking aside, it wasn't that funny, because of course, how many valuations were falling through the cracks where people couldn't book us in?
Going elsewhere.
But so getting levels of personnel right was always tricky. But I always would have rather there been a little bit of a lag where people had to wait than have agents twiddling their thumbs. There was always pressure of more wage. Simon, keep recruiting. But I wanted to get, and I was never 100% successful, but I tried to be, which is just ensuring that agents always had enough to do. Because whilst there was a queue of 2.5 weeks, if you'd fast forward 3.5, 4 months later during the November Christmas time, they were noticeably quieter.
Yeah.
So, but I did see from other agents, because other territory owners, as we were called, franchisees, they'd over recruited, and then the agents were complaining that there wasn't enough to go around. So, that's not an issue that I ever wanted.
Was that because you was so good at your marketing and the business of running Purple Bricks, or was it because you was really lucky in your territory and East London was blown up?
No, I think it's a whole combination of things. And first of all, there was the founders with deep pockets, and the investment that they took into the firm allowed incredible marketing to be done by a great marketing team that really disrupted and put a lot of noises out of joint on the high street, versus our more traditional competitors. I think some areas perhaps gelled better with Purple Bricks than others. And I think the Purple Bricks proposition, which was a low-cost estate agency model, suited the lower to mid-market type of properties than other areas.
Which is the masses, I guess.
Which is the masses. And I think I've always tried to be, I have dealt with the super high end in London, and people may seem that is the glamorous and that's where the riches are. That's not necessarily my experience. It's sometimes quite nice having a £5 million house on your books, or a £10 million house on your books, but they're not the easiest to sell, and buyers aren't 10 a penny. And the seller might say, well, I know it's only worth 7 million, but I really want 10. That listing could be on your books for months. And maybe it's just me and my personality type, but I like volume and I like things moving quickly. So East London kind of fitted the Purple Bricks model perfectly. It just sat really snugly, nicely with the abundance of flats and terraced housing. That is after all, the demographic of the housing stock in East London. So that's why I believe Purple Bricks did well. It also did well because I like to think I ran a good team, and Purple Bricks, because the seller had to pay regardless of whether we sold it or not. I felt so. Some have channeled or frustration at Purple Bricks where you're just taking the fee, and whether you sell it or not is irrelevant.
Where's the motivation on your
part?
What's
the motivation? And I would sometimes, and that was a question that was sometimes raised in the living room. And I suppose every character is different, and there are cowboys that probably took that perspective. But if I was challenged with that objection in the living room by Mrs. Smith, I would say, well, Mrs. Smith, what do you do for a living? And she said, I'm a primary school teacher. I'd say, well, Mrs. Smith, if your primary school was to pay you at the beginning of the month rather than the end of the month, would you work less hard? And the answer on the whole was no, I wouldn't. I'd still do my job. And I suppose we were in a world where, listen, you want to do the right thing. There's no where's the personal satisfaction in taking somebody's money and doing a runner or being a fly by night? There's no personal satisfaction surely in that. I wanted myself and my team to, I wanted people to recommend us, to leave us reviews, to tell their friends, and when they next sold again, to give us a shout. That, that's what to me was a sustainable business and legacy that I wanted to leave. When I left Purple Bricks, the wheels were falling off and the culture had changed, and it was less about service and more just about bums on seats with listings. And I was probably, should we say, too outspoken to say, no, you shouldn't be doing it that way. That I parted, myself and Purple Bricks parted company.
Well, it kind of leads nicely into my next question, because for those of you who don't know you, so Property with Simon, you've now built this brand, you've gone out on your own, you've built a really successful business, and it's all about being very personable, always being available, being there throughout the whole process, right? You are the brand, you are the business, everybody gets access to you, which is great. And a couple of questions that come to mind around that are, where did this idea or this brand come from? And the bigger question is, have you struggled to build that brand of being personable and genuine and honest and available all the time as an estate agent, when estate agents, for the most part, don't have the best reputation?
So a few things. There's you've right, yeah. So I had to, when I was with Purple Bricks, I was earning well, but also my wife is a GP and works long hours, and family life can be a bit of a juggle. I've got 2 young kids. Well, they're a bit older now, but certainly when I was at Purple Bricks, there was, drop offs at a nursery or drop off at primary school. I'd do, a pick up at 3:00 one day a week, and then come home, give my little one something to eat, and I would maybe do some emails and make some calls. When my tenure at Purple Bricks came to an end, I remember I always was like retching at the thought of, oh my God, I need to replace a very good income. And number two, the dynamic that we have at home with me being a little bit flexible with pickups and drop-offs, this is really going to affect my family. Therefore, I'm unemployable. I can't go into agency if I want to go back into state agency on the high street and say to the owner or whatever, well, by the way, I will be leaving at 3:00 on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and I'll work from home. They're like, yeah, that ain't happening, right? So therefore, I have to do this. I have to do my own thing. There's no choice. If I want to have the balance of earning well and having a family life where I've got that involvement where I can help with logistics, that I need to build that in. Therefore, I have to create brand Simon Taylor, hence Property with Simon. And that was a little bit, was I daunted? It was in the aftermath of COVID. And there was no pipeline. I had a decent amount of savings to see me through. But whether it was going to work or not, I didn't know. But I did seek guidance from a branding agency as to how I wanted to pitch myself. And they kind of wanted to pitch me as a little bit of a wise old owl, or somebody in a barber coat and corduroy trousers, somebody in the pub that you would, talks good, common, down to earth sense. So it was, should we say, earthy greens and a few oranges. And they wanted me that was the brand that they wanted to portray me as. And I think I remember.
Was that an estate agency specific branding company, or was it just a generalized?
No, it's brand Simon Taylor.
No, but the company that you went to get advice from.
Oh, sorry, were they
general?
No, they had experience of working with estate agents, but they'd done a host of other brands, from restaurants to toiletries to all sorts. And it was just me. I didn't know who they were really. I put some tenders out there to a few companies that I liked the look of, or liked the portfolio of people that they'd worked with. I liked their tone of voice, and I liked what they were envisaging from me. So I invested in that, and I've had quite a lot of comments about my website. It's probably looking a little bit stale and needs a refresh. It's sort of 4 or 5 years old now. But no, I was really proud of it at the time. It was just, listen, 4 or 5 years ago, there was very few personal branded estate agency websites out there where it was all about that individual as the agent. Now there's a hell of a lot more. I'm not saying I was a pioneer, because it was just sort of learning tricks from others, but it was putting my spin on it and telling my story. It was me with my wife and my children and my home, and here I am in my area, and that's what it was all about. And that was, I was conscious that I wanted to create a personal brand as well as an agency. And it was sort of a belt and braces, full service, very bespoke, hand holding the whole way through. One thing you have mentioned there is being available all the time. And I've learned the hard way that that's not necessarily the right thing to do for your own sanity. So when I was in Purple Bricks, I would take my laptop on holiday with me, and my phone. It was my business after all. It was my franchise area. And I suppose maybe I was a poor delegator at that time versus now, where I would go down, I would say I was in the hotel, and I would leave my phone or laptop in the hotel room and go down to the swimming pool with my young children. And I would dread coming up to the hotel room, seeing a phone with 40 missed calls and 28 emails. It would really stress me out. And if I could go back in time, I would have just said, no, I'm diverted the phone completely to a colleague, for my own sanity and mental health, because running your own business can be energy zapping, time zapping, and consume your thoughts relentlessly. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So I've had to adapt, and I'm certainly not perfect, but knowing when to say enough. And, so once upon a time, I would have thought nothing, and I would have thought I was the big swinging dick by maybe taking a phone call at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night from some nutter of a whoever that think it's acceptable to phone at 10 o'clock at night. It's not acceptable to phone at 10 o'clock at night. So now, for instance, 7 o'clock-ish, my phone's, I'm not taking any work calls or answering any I will occasionally, but I'm not going to, I'll normally let it sit to the next day. Nobody's going to die.
If you love to travel like me and you understand the power in escaping the money for time exchange trap, but you just don't know how to do it, then building an Airbnb consultancy business could be exactly what you have been looking for. Right now in the UK, there is a completely untapped opportunity through helping struggling Airbnb hosts by turning around their underperforming properties and generating you huge commission payments in the process. We are going to teach you all of the tools and all of the techniques that we've learned over the last 5 years through building our very own multiple six-figure Airbnb business, arming you with everything that you need to swoop in and save the day. Minimal startup costs, zero risk, and almost unlimited potential. Sound good? Welcome to the Airbnb Consultant. Contact us through any of the channels included in the studio notes to get the conversation started. What was it that stressed you out about coming back and seeing 40 missed calls? Was that because you thought you was losing money, or that you weren't getting the service that
it was probably just the not wanting to let anybody down. And I suppose I'm just not very, if there's a to-do list, I want to work through that to-do list. And the last thing I would want is things to really pile up. I was just conscious that things have to be chipped away. And I suppose I probably made a rod for my own back by telling people, don't you worry, I'm going away, but you can always get hold of me. Don't you worry, that's fine. No, we won't phone you if you're on holiday, Simon. But rest assured they do.
So based on that, Simon, and I completely agree, completely understand, you have to switch off and get your family time, but how do you grow your business, your brand, what you've gone out to do? Property with Simon, I'm available, hand-holding you all the way through from start to finish. How do you maintain that as you grow?
Right. Okay. So it all depends on if we're talking about growth of the agency or we're talking about growth of me as a person and my other interests that I'm involved in. But I think it's a lot about to do with delegation and knowing what I'm skilled at and knowing what I'm not skilled at, and what I'm not skilled at, I outsource. Otherwise, if you're never going to see me editing a video. You're never going to see me adding music to a video. You're never going to see me probably doing a viewing on a Sunday morning if needs be. I will outsource these things. You'll never see me answering Rightmove inquiries. They will be handled by a gatekeeper who will then take some messages and then pass on to me what needs to be passed on about somebody needing to view a property. But what I can't have is me on a way to a viewing and 10, 15 Rightmove inquiries coming into my phoning me about booking in a viewing for 3 Acacia Road. I have to have levels of people around me to help. So suppose that the essence is, nobody can really build things on their own. You need a team around you. Yes, to keep you sane, but B, to keep the wheels turning and allow you to take more on and get bigger. So I have a team of videographers. I have it still amazes me that some estate agents still do their own photography. Like they actually go out themselves and take a photograph and go out there with a measuring tape. Again, you would never. That's just to me, that's just not a good waste of time, not a good use of time. And a good estate agent is not necessarily a good photographer.
Would you say, Simon, that maybe naturally you're a little bit of a control freak or a bit of a micromanager, and you've found it hard to let go and allow other people to come in and help you build the business? I'm just thinking Property with Simon, I'm there all the time. I'll be there with every step of the way. Is that because you felt like you needed to build something that was done right? I suppose I wanted, when I left Purple Bricks, I came to the conclusion that if I'm going to build anything, I want to build it for me, that nobody can take it away. It's mine. So if you call that a micromanaging, then perhaps I knew that I felt that estate agency was going in one direction, that was personal branded estate agents in the age of social media. Because people relate more to a person than they do to a faceless brand. So I wanted to be the face of that brand and build a connection with the areas that I serve. And in the beginning, I suppose I've had to. No, do you know something? No, I'm gonna hit that back on you. I knew what I was good at. I knew what I needed to do, and to do that
I got a branding agency in. I got a company to build the website. I got external photographers to help me with the photography. I got external help to help me with the copy on the website. I have videographers and editors that help me with my video production. So I have people helping me with viewings. I certainly do not do my own VAT return. I outsource that to an accountant. So I think maybe I've got better as I've got older. I'm pretty good at letting go and outsourcing as much as I possibly can. I think
you have to be in business, right? Because otherwise you can't do it all. You'll end up pulling your hair out, like you said.
No, and I have been there, done that, and thought it was a badge of honor, me running around like a blue arse fly. And I suppose, maybe as you get older, you realize that sometimes less is more, and it's harder. It's smarter, not harder, is the best path. So to keep things sane and keep things in an even keel, whatever I can outsource, I'll outsource. I've even heard of some estate agents putting up their own boards, their own for sale boards or so. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. For £12, I can get somebody to do that. So
now I can imagine that when you went down this road of building your own agency, I guess there's two ways of looking at what a lot of people would think is, how the hell are you ever going to compete with the big boys? Because there's a few chains that are just absolutely control the market, right? But then the other person might look at it and say, well, that can create a really nice niche that could be exploited by giving a lot more personal attention and having that personal touch, which is what you've done. So did you see that straight away from the beginning, or were you worried about how the hell do I compete in this market?
I was never really worried about how I would compete in this market, simply because when you're in the niche or the industry that I'm in, just because it's a big branded corporate on the high street doesn't mean that the people inside are that good.
No.
So
it's normally the opposite.
Yeah. So there was actually quite a lot of rich pickings of stock properties that weren't selling with, ex estate agent, and you'd get in touch with the owner and offer to do things that offer a different perspective and ask the right questions and offer the right guidance and offer the right valuation advice. And before you know it, you'd built rapport and trust. A number of my the initial clients that I brought on board were people that I'd sold for previously that wanted to work with me, and I think that was just sort of say trust and rapport. But yeah, when I was at Proper Bricks, I had a diary literally clogged with valuations, booked in for this Saturday, the following Saturday, and sometimes the Saturday after that. And then when you start your own business, your own estate agency, you are looking at a completely empty diary. There's nothing in it. And the only one that can fill it is you. So you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. It's entirely up to you. But the thought of me not doing it meant going and getting a job somewhere, and that made me, literally feel physically sick. So I had to make it work. And I enjoyed the hustle of filling my diary with appointments for valuations, even if I didn't win the business. Or even if the seller didn't, or the owner didn't want to sell at that moment in time. I considered that is a real win. And I think I've learned that you've got to celebrate those little wins, all these little wins. And to me, that was a little win, because I'm thinking, well, hang on a wee second. They've called me out to value. Whatever I've put out there has resonated with that person. That's a success. Just keep doing that. And it will resonate with more people. And I think one of my I knew I had to get involved with social media with when I was going out on my own. And I knew that having a physical office, to be a physical office was just surplus to requirements. And I remember being in one valuation appointment and asked the guy, well, how did you, where did you see me? Have I been recommended? He says, no, you've not come recommended. I just saw you put on social media a picture of you having a coffee in the local park. And that was a bit of I knew that might be the case, but this was a clever guy, articulate, knew what he was doing, very nice house, wanting to sell. And that's how he found me. So I just said, well, I've got to really go in all guns blazing on social media to stand out and differentiate myself from the bigger, more corporate entities who have got a social media that's, pales in comparison to the following that I've built.
So you didn't really know that from the start.
I knew, but you take it all with a pinch of salt, and you're like, yeah, whatever. I'll do a couple of posts here and there, and that'll be enough.
So do you have a physical premises? Do you have an office, or
I've
is
got
everything just done?
I work occasionally out of a serviced office, but there could be 3-4 days I go past and I'm not there.
Yeah, it's really, really smart because, the people that we work with, our mentees and our coaching programs, we we talk endlessly about, you've got to be on social media, you've got to build a brand, you've got to be consistent, you've got to get this stuff out there, let everybody know what you're doing, where you are, where you're operating, successes and failures, the good and the bad. And I never think that, people really understand the potential of it, a shop window to the world that's free. And for everybody who's listening at home that doesn't follow Simon on socials, I think you've got about 128,000 followers on Instagram.
It's 141,000 now. It seems to be growing at a thousand or so a week.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So what is, I mean, obviously I've seen your Instagram and they're really well done. They're really nicely edited, and it's basically you doing your walkarounds in these properties and talking about them and selling them. So it's working in multiple ways for your business, because no doubt you also sell a lot of properties based on what people see on Instagram.
Well, yeah. So the property handle is Property with Simon. That's where people can find me, and I've got better at it over time. It's certainly no Hollywood production. It's not super high end. My videographer uses a iPhone, and there's
very watchable.
What?
Very watchable. Very watchable.
Well, thank you. And it's now to the point of, and it may sound arrogant, Rightmove and Zoopla play a big part in property marketing and advertising. If Rightmove, if I stopped doing advertising on Rightmove, I don't think I'd be overly worried, because I'm getting sufficient inquiries coming in from social media for valuations and for viewing requests, which is pretty mad, really.
Yeah. I like him. I mean, the music's nice, the graphics are nice.
Do you know what? I'm very hands. Thank you for saying so. I'm very hands off. I suppose I let my videographers, who are cool guys in their mid-20s, and they know what works. They just say, Simon, in the early days, it was like, oh, you're doing that wrong, and you're doing that. Why are we doing that? I don't like that music or that soundtrack. And I just said, you know what? You guys are the experts. You know what you're doing.
Do what you need to do.
Do what you need to do. I'm not going to I'll give a little bit of direction. This is what I'd like us to do when we're at a hot property, and this is how I would like the tour to go. But it's collaborative, and they tell me, no, don't do it like that. Do it like this. And I give them total free reign on the editing and the music. And it's not really, well, I suppose it's a collaboration that between us that has built the following to what it is now. It's mad. The social media is mad, and it definitely does work. And I know it works. Well, I guess I wouldn't be speaking to you now if it wasn't for my social media. I remember giving one. I had this dentist. She was lovely. Lived in Singapore for 15 years, moving back to London due to a relationship breakdown. Thought I was sincere, liked my stuff, had seen it in Singapore. Invited me round to her house. What should I do? I said, well, whatever you do, don't sell it. Just move back in, see how you feel. Just get a feel for the area. You've got kids now that you're moving back to the UK with, just one thing at a time. Why don't you settle here for a year or two and see if you like being back in East London, or you might want to go out. And she was so grateful. And at the end of the evaluation appointment, asked for a selfie. And I thought, so that's happened on a few occasions. So I think the investment I've put into social media has really paid off. And I think how I've, I think a key to success is I don't do anything that anybody else couldn't do. The only thing that I definitely do is I show up every day. There's content that goes out every single day and has done for 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So how much time do you put into the social media part of the business as opposed to actually physically selling houses? How much time are you recording content?
Not much.
Really?
No. So I'll give you, for instance. So I'm going to see 2 houses tomorrow, which are coming to the market. They're both lovely houses, both very photogenic, quite Instagrammy, if you know what I mean. And there will be a property tour of each of the houses. Then I will be doing highlights, showing a video, and then more video content about the garden. Then something about period features, pointing out high ceilings and fireplaces and wooden flooring, etc. So in actual fact, we can typically get 4 or 5 videos out of each 4 or 5 videos out of each property. So by doing 2 properties tomorrow, I'll have 8 videos. Then I'll have probably 2 or 3 advice videos of me walking and talking down the street, walkie-talkies as we call them. So all of a sudden, I'm with my photographers tomorrow for 4 hours. I will have 10, 12 videos. I meet up with them twice a month, my videographer. So, on each occasion, we get a dozen or so videos. So all of a sudden, between 8 hours a month or thereabouts, I have a month's worth of content.
You post every day a video goes out.
So what the deal that I have with my videographers, then, so I've been there for 4 hours tomorrow and 4 hours in a couple of weeks. They've then got a month's worth of content, and then they will drip feed a video into the socials every day. I'm hands off.
Do you do any kind of paid promotions, or is it all organic?
All organic. You know what? If I was, you say amazing, and if I was doing something that was so sensational and so clever, I would say, yeah, okay, thanks very much, Alex. But I'm literally not. I'm literally just turning up and coming up with some ideas. Oh, I know it would be really cool. Let's do a feature on the garden room, right? And this is what you could do if you had space in your garden and you wanted to work from home. That's all I've done. And then they filmed it and then they've put it up there. There's no crazy black hat genius strategies other than a video a day, because the algorithm seems to like a video a day.
I'll push back slightly on that, Simon,
Okay.
and reflect back. There's obviously something that you're doing. You're not just turning up and standing in front of a camera. It's the things you're saying. It's the way that you're engaging with your listeners and your viewers. It's the content that you're providing. It's the information and the advice that you're talking about. And obviously that is very attractive to the 140 odd thousand people that follow
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate that.
So
I suppose, maybe Alex, I think you and I don't know, we're probably a similar-ish age. And maybe when you get to a certain age, you don't give a fuck what people think. Right. And thankfully, I don't really get any trolls or much of a backlash. Sometimes some of the properties get a little bit of negative comments that the owners don't like. But the sad reflection on society now is the more negative comments that there are, the algorithm that fuels the algorithm when you get more and more views and more hits and more viewing requests. So it kind of, negative comments would be a good thing. It sounds ironic, but maybe I should have more. But
you should aim for more.
I just wanted to be me. I've got 20 years experience, and I'm just talking about things that I think I'm talking about things that I think that I find interesting, or I think a viewer, somebody would find of interest. So you'll never talk to me about, I've just exchanged on this, or I've just sold. Yeah, who cares, right? But advice on if you've got a short lease and you're thinking of selling, this is what you should do. If you're buying a property and you've never bought one before, here's the 5 things that you should really look out for. But high-fiving myself in terms of just sold this, or just, big deal, nobody really cares apart from me and my mum.
Yeah. So when you get to your kind of size on Instagram, obviously there's people with millions, all the rest of the celebrities, but as a normal guy on the street that's building a business, to have 140 odd thousand followers is a pretty big deal. Who manages, presumably when you've got that many eyes on your content, you're getting quite a lot of messages, a lot of engagement, a lot of comments. Do you have someone who's designated to just respond to comments?
I don't respond. I don't respond to every comment.
No. So you handle that yourself, or do you have someone?
Yeah, no, I handle all that myself. But if there's a post that's maybe gone wild and got 500,000 views, and there's maybe 700 comments, I'm not commenting to everyone. I'm just not doing it. If I see comments that, if I see comments about somebody wants a viewing request, I'll jump in on that. Quite often there's people who've the people who are commenting are responding to the other people that have commented about the area or what's happening or what this or that. So they're getting into sometimes debates or conversations or arguments on my thread, which I think is quite funny. Then I get loads of DMs from people from Dubai or Pakistan or Turkey or Australia or America wanting advice on buying a property.
Yep.
Can I help them? A lot of them are a little bit spammy. And I remember having a bit of a debate with somebody who's a bit of a mentor of mine. And I use the analogy, not that I'm comparing myself to David Beckham in any way, shape or form, but he says, see, David Beckham, he's on social media. Yeah. He says, do you think he responds to every one of his DMs? I says, no, he doesn't. I says, so why do you think you need to? So I will act as a filter, but I don't see any, personally, I don't, when you get to, when you've maybe got 100 DMs a day, I can't, I have to have a little bit of a filter, and I can't help everybody. So you've got to prioritize who you think you can help the most. Now, there are some very lovely people that get in touch and they want my advice on certain properties, and I offer advice sessions. So then I thought, well, again, this mentor said to me, why don't you charge for a half-hour phone call, 45-minute phone call to discuss their needs or their queries, questions about a specific property or properties or the market. You know, people will pay for that advice. And I do, not every week, but every other week or so, I will have scheduled Zoom calls with people where we can discuss their specific requirements. And I think that's probably, another way of monetizing the social media that you've got, people wanting just your advice. But if I was just to give out my free advice all day long, every day, then and answering DMs, I'd never get anything done.
Are you now monetizing Instagram? Are you making money from your content?
Well, not. So I suppose, well, the people that knock on my door wanting to schedule a call, I guess that's monetizing. I get sent the occasional freebie. Mm-hmm. I think I would really like to get better with maybe some sort of partnerships with maybe furniture companies or paint or timber
there must
merchants.
Be a ton of opportunities now for
I've never really found somebody that knows exactly what I'm looking for, that could really give me a hand in that regard. But it is something that I'd be keen to explore, whether it's, hacks on how to get the great kitchen look, but without blowing the bank. And there's some great kitchens that I've seen that clients have from Wix and IKEA. And if you get a basic kitchen and then you jazz it up with handles and hardware from this company, then, so those are avenues that I would love to explore. However, there's just so many plates spinning but it will come in due course. It's something that I have asked my videographers to look into and explore on my behalf, because I think that is something that I think some value could come to the table on that front. But
absolutely.
In terms of monetizing, so
you're not getting paid from Instagram for eyes on your content.
No, you can't do that. I'm told that you can get monetized. You can monetize TikTok if video reels are over a minute long, but that kind of goes against the grain of of the algorithms of Instagram, where Instagram prefers it less than a minute. So it's just getting balances right. So whether Instagram or not goes paid, I don't know, but yeah, if it does, then there are certainly videos that are doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 million views that might bring in a little bit of revenue, which would be very nice. But at the moment, in terms of revenue, I get valuation requests, I get people booking in calls, and I get buyers. So yeah, I am monetizing it in a way.
Yeah. What would your advice be, Simon, to other people that are out there, very impressed by the fact that you've got this big following and, in the reasonably short time that you've done it? What would your advice be to them on how to build a brand? What would some of the tips that you give? Because, it's hard. I put out a lot of content. I haven't got a following anywhere near as big as you. I'm very consistent with what I put out. It's all highly produced, but sometimes it just doesn't get the views. And then you see some other idiot that's, doing all kinds of stupid stuff and they're getting millions of views. And it's frustrating because you think, well, why aren't people looking at my content and they're spending their time looking at that? Sometimes I think that, people are just so tired that they just want to kind of just completely zone out and just switch their brains off, and that's part of the reason. So how do you stay different in such a saturated kind of market?
Uh, I think I think you've got to just be comfortable in your own skin, and and just be beyond, just authentically you, and tell it how you see things, and don't try and copy anybody else's style or way of doing it. Now, there's many occasions where I'll watch somebody else who's done a property video and say, oh, I really like that, or I like what they've said about whatever, right? And then I'll just articulate it into my own words. Am I copying it? No, not really. I'm just, should we say, using it as as an idea generator to then put my own Simon Taylor spin and look and feel on it. And I think you've got to get used to being a bit uncomfortable at the beginning, because when I first started doing videos, I'd get lots of, I'd make stutters, and I'd get nervous. Then I would, take 12, take 14, then get myself into a fluster, and then just practice makes perfect, and you get into a rhythm and a roll, and it just kind of flows naturally. In terms of the polishing and the editing and the lighting and the music, and it's got to be perfect and it's got to look professional. Now, screw that. That's bullshit. People want natural, authentic, real. And I think that's maybe why some of my stuff has done much better than some of the agents that are selling multi-million pound listings. I get the appeal of what they're doing because it's sort of escapism, but I guess I'm just real. I just try and bring real properties to real people. That's me. And if you like what you see, great, give me a follow. If not, well then jog on. I'm not bothered. And I think not being bothered about how many likes you've had or how many comments you've had or how many, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
I think, just as an outsider looking in, Simon, at what you do, I would immediately think, and I could be way off here, but just my opinion.
Yeah.
Estate agencies as a whole, when you look at their social media, it's normally some really dull guy in a suit standing there saying, hey, this is John here from Purple Bricks. I'm here at 123 Smith Street, and here you can see we've got 2 bedrooms, and it's very, very dull, and it's very repetitive, and it's very boring, and it's very corporate. And I think what you do is very different, very personal, which is your brand. It's refreshing, it's engaging. You've got nice music. There's nice visuals. It's very well edited. And I think it's just different and refreshing in a very stale market.
Thank you for saying that, and I try and make it. Maybe it's just in my DNA that I've always been a little bit of a maverick, who's gone against the grain, who's not very good at the corporate life. And my only advice is to anybody is just, you'll know who the players are in your local industry. Try not to do things the way they do things, because nobody wants more of the same. There's what's the point? What is you want to really maybe just get that USP across in who you are, in terms of how you do things, present things, your take on things. And, that's really the only advice I could possibly give, and just follow lots of people within the online sphere, whatever niche that you're in, who are in your industry, and just pick out what you like and what you don't like. I'm a bit a la carte. I'll take a little bit from this one, a little bit from that one, and mush it all together and add my take on it, and it's mine. There's lots of great people doing it in America, in the States, and I try and get a little bit of influence from other industries. So particularly in the personal training sphere, there's lots of cool guys doing it in there. So I'll try and take a little bit of hints and tips from what they're doing from different markets, and then bring it into estate agency. But most of all, be yourself. And whatever you do, don't be there, if you are an estate agency, be there with a shirt and tie. It's just boring, really. You've just got to keep it fun and lighthearted.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Looking at the American, the way the Americans do it, they've got it nailed. It's just exciting what those guys do. So, I guess a good place to start is, whatever your space is, go and see what they're doing, what the equivalent is over there.
And don't bullshit. If it's got a small garden, you don't have to. It's a big garden. Just the facts. Don't embellish, overly embellish. which is a difficult trait for an estate agent, but you've got to keep it realistic.
Do you not get, you said that you don't get trolled, which surprises me, because I would have thought that when you do your video and you say, so we got this beautiful 2-bed flat here in Walthamstow and it's on the market for £600,000, I thought you'd get absolutely hammered.
Well, I do. Well, here's the thing, right? So are you saying that, are these people trolling me, or are they trolling the property?
No, trolling the industry, and you are part of the industry that's causing these,
well, I don't see that as somebody, I don't see that as somebody personally trolling me. Right, I can't help them. I'm not, I don't make the market. I don't dictate the prices of the average 2-bedroom flat in Leighton at this moment in time. The market decides and dictates. Right, you could argue that I'm part of the machine, but the machine's a hell of a lot bigger than me, with all the other agents and all the buyers and all the sellers, supply and demand economics, and the economic factors, and the Bank of England, and the current base rates, and so I am. I don't decide or dictate. If is anybody on there bullying me and saying about, look at the state of him, or my God, his accent, or he's put on weight since his last video. No, I don't get that, right?
You don't get anything to do about your accent. You don't get any.
I've had somebody say, is a leprechaun or whatever, but maybe that's my USP, right? And I don't think it's ever done me any harm over here.
Yeah.
And quite a few Northern Irish people that have heard me and are dealing with a London property have reached out to me. So it's great. And I'm sure there's probably people that don't like an Irish accent or Irish people. So I repel them. I'm not bothered. But yeah, the properties that I've dealt with have had negative comments thrown at them. Yeah, people have accused me of being part of the big bad ugly machine. But again, I don't really see that as personal. I don't take that, rightly or wrongly, I don't take that personally, because it's totally out of my control. If somebody mentioned my receding hairline or belly, or is he wearing that awful shirt again? I might maybe take it a bit more personally. But
I get a lot of wig wearing comments. Why is this guy? What is it? Why does this guy dye his hair but not his beard? Or why is this guy wearing a wig? I don't know why. I don't personally think.
And maybe it's an age thing. Does that bother you, Alex?
No, I the same as you. It pushes the algorithm up. I love it, and I find it funny, because how sad are those people? That's all.
God, there's a lot of Well, there's a lot of people out there with nothing better to do, and there's been a time. I remember there's been a time, which is maybe a lesson for people who want to get into social media. And I would schedule to meet up. It was going back about in my early days, and I was scheduled to meet my videographer one Thursday, right? And a week before, I'm thinking, Frank, I've not got any properties to shoot this Thursday, right? And then next Thursday, and then the Monday came, and then the Tuesday came. I thought, I've not got a property to shoot. And I phoned the guy and I said, I want to cancel the shoot for this Thursday. He's like, yeah. You do that. That's the easy thing to do. You cancel the shoot, right? Or we could come up with some great ideas. Let's do it in your office, and we'll do some advice videos. But if you want to cancel, you cancel. But Simon, that the right thing to do is to keep the shoot, keep the commitment, and do some content. And he was 100% fucking right, excuse my French, which is, when you're not in the mood, you just got to do, it's like exercise. Do I really want to go to the gym later? Not really. But am I going to feel a million times better and glad that I've done it? Of course I will. And I did the content. So my only advice is, even when you're not in the mood, there's always something. There's always something you could talk about. If you can't think of anything, then follow others for inspiration, or look at I reckon I could go to any newspaper and pick out anything and make it into some sort of property story. It could be about more houses being built. It could be something about the Labour conference that's on at the moment in Liverpool, where they're talking about targets or the inflation or the budget. There's so many things. Anything. So,
but you just pushing back on that, Simon. You realise that that's a talent that you have inside of you, right? Because I feel like I'm also pretty good at doing that. I can take something and turn it into lots of potential content ideas. But there's, most people struggle massively with, what am I going to say? What am I going to put out? I don't have anything going on. And I'm like, guys, every day you get up and open your laptop, even you just sitting there searching listings, film that stuff, talk about what you're doing and put that shit out. And people love that because they think it's going to be boring because they're not getting anywhere. But I say, look, there's people that are 6 months behind you that are watching you, that are inspired by what you're doing. So you've always got to remember that.
And as somebody said to me once, who's quite well known in the world of property, just because you talked about something, a particular topic 4 months ago or 6 months ago, recycle it. Yeah. Recycle it. Refresh it. Edition for second edition. You've talked about it previously and you're talking about it again. The tips that you gave 3 months ago, 6 months ago, yeah, they're all valid still, but maybe there's an extra one or two on top that are, have come to light in recent times where you could talk about those as well. So I think it's just freaking coming up with content is I get it that it maybe doesn't come naturally to many, and I guess it didn't to me either. But weirdly, whether I'm always, if I'm going for a walk or in the car or even in the shower, you come out, oh, that would be quite good for a video idea. And you make it, I think in the early days, I used to think, oh, I must talk about that in the show, for my video, with my videographer. And you're like, fuck, what did I don't know. I remember thinking that I should remember something for the show, and I can't remember it. So Another trick is freaking the notes section on my phone is just littered with stuff to talk about on the show. So because I will not remember it. So I'll have to write it down. I think I'll remember it, but I won't.
Yeah, that's a really, really good tip. So, because we talk about potentially, for people that are struggling with what to say, is to pipeline some stuff. So, get a whiteboard on the wall and just do a brain dump and write down some ideas and then dissect those ideas into more ideas and just blow it up.
The only thing I will say is if you were to sit with a whiteboard and then come up in a room and come up with ideas, I'd struggle. So I think it's literally, I will come up with, I don't know where they come from. I don't mean to be crude, but you could be on the toilet or you could be just doing something. It's the most mundane things. That's when I come up with one idea. So it could be in the shower, on the walk, making the dinner. And then all of a sudden over the course of 10 days, you've got 4, 5, 6 notes. And then all of a sudden you get that 6 video contents for me to go through with my, with my videographer. So that from a social media perspective, that's always worked well for me. And because I can't just turn up with my videographer and wing it. I've got to do prep work.
Yeah, you got to know what you're going to talk about, and that comes across in the videos. And for anybody listening to this, definitely go over and head, and we'll drop the handles at the end, Simon, and we'll put it all in the show notes so people can go and follow you. So coming out of the social media subject a little bit, because I can see we're already at an hour here. I've got a couple more questions. How do you ever? And I'd appreciate your honesty on this, if you can, but do you ever sell a property? Let's use the 2-bed flat in Leighton as an example again. It's an old property. It needs a bunch of work doing to it. It's got a garden the size of a postage stamp. It's got all the other, it's not near the train line. It's opposite a park where there's gangs hanging around, and you sell it for £500,000, let's say. Do you ever do that deal, get that contract signed, and you get home and you think, fuck me, what is wrong with these people spending £500,000 on that shoebox? How on earth are they paying these prices? Do you ever think that? Or
of course I do. Of course I do.
Day's work?
Of course I do. And there's instances where I get it right and they've overpaid. And 3 years later, they've still overpaid and it's not worth necessarily what they paid. And there's instances 3 years later where, they were right and I was wrong. And, property, people can get carried away, and the East London market has been particularly buoyant. COVID has really hurt flat sales, but houses, it's a race for space, and people want outdoors and gardens and freeholds and bedrooms. Pokey flats have really struggled, and people that have bought particular types of properties in London, particularly new builds over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, have struggled. They're not making any money. In fact, many are making a loss. It's not something that you often hear about. So there are certain types of properties in London, in East London, that I will no longer want to. I no longer sell. I refuse to take them on because they're
Is that because they're just not doing well out of it over the long term, or
no,
they're
it's just
overpriced?
because it's purely from a selfish reason. They're just not. They're either a nightmare to sell or impossible to sell. So it could be to do with cladding, or depending on what they paid for it, or there could be issues with regarding service charges. Where you've got a one bed flat worth £300,000 and the service charge is £4,000, 1% of the value of the property, where lenders just do not like service charges at that level. So I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I'm just not going to chase my tail. And again, I think that's just working smarter than not harder. So I'm cherry picking. I've got to cherry pick what I want to work with. And I suppose when you get to a certain level, you can be a little bit more picky with who you want to get into bed with. And there's some lovely people, but if the property is an impossible task, there was one I got talked into doing, which I'm sending the keys back on. It was just it's an average flat in an average block with an average size outside space, and it needs a price reduction. And I've banged my head, and I've done 20 viewings, and I'm having to say, right, I'm out. I'm done. I can't.
Is that because the owner won't accept a price?
So they won't listen to my advice. So rather than persist, I'm an estate agent, not a magician. So sometimes you've got to think smarter, right? Enough wasting time on that endeavor. It's time to move on to something else. And with one door closing, something else. It's a little bit frustrating, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Does that normally force them to turn around and listen to you in the end, or they'll say, see you later?
A mixture of the two. Quite often, the right advice is a bitter pill to swallow, and sometimes, well, quite often they will agree with me, but say, you know what, I don't want to do that, so let's just take it off the market for a year.
And if you were to sell that property, would you sleep well that night?
Oh, the thing that I've sold somebody something that they've overpaid for.
Yeah.
Well, it's all relative, right? And is overpaying. If you really want something, and you're there, here's the thing, right? If somebody's buying something to then sell it, so I was on a viewing on Saturday, and he said he was going to do it up and sell it. I said, how? What? There's no money in it. What are you talking about? You can't do that, right? And he won't be buying it. But if he was saying, Simon, this is what I'm prepared to pay. I know it's a lot of money, but you know what? It's for me and my family. We're going to be here for 10, 15 years. Does overpaying by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%? Nobody's really overpaying by 10, 20%. Does it really matter in the long term? Have I ever handed keys over where their buyers pissed off or disappointed? Never. So do I ever feel bad? No, but I'm never. No, I never feel like a crook in any way, shape, or form. Nobody's forcing a gun to their head. 99 times out of 100, they're getting a mortgage, so the mortgage valuation has passed it through. And if they're there for the long term, London's an expensive city, and in 20 years' time, it'll probably look cheap.
Who are these people that are buying, I don't know, let's say a 6-bedroom house in Walthamstow or, Buckerstill for £2 million? Who are they, and what do they do for work generally?
It's probably, they could quite easily be in law, media, fashion, senior management, large PLC FTSE company. They could be moving from a 2 or 3 bedroom flat at £600,000 in a salubrious part of East London, and they're moving up the ladder. And they could have been their first step. The second step could have been a 3-bed mid-terrace house, and now they're moving a little bit further out, and they want more money. They want more property. It's their own money. They're in good jobs, both likely working, both probably earning £300,000 or more per annum. Probably got plenty of equity because they've ridden the wave at the right time. They're probably 40s, mid-late 40s, 50s. And they've probably maybe a little bit of family money where the bank and mum and dad have helped them along the way. And don't forget a big mortgage.
And why do you think that those people wouldn't take that 1.6 million and buy, a manor house with 4 acres of land further out?
I guess it's close to be family and friends and their work, and they I suppose the allure of London, and they still enjoy London, but maybe the kids are at school here and they've got ties here. And I think that whole the work from home, it's probably dissipated slightly, and people are needing to be in the offices more, and perhaps for career progression, they need to be in London. But there's plenty of people leaving London. For every property it's quite often that for everybody buying a house in London, probably 40-50% of the time that I'm selling them, they're leaving London. So there's people that will look at, we want a 5-bedroom house and we want it in Walthamstow, we want it in Woodford or Ilford, and it's 1.5 or more, £1.5 million, and they're choking and saying, well, we can't afford that, and we want more space than that anyway. So they are moving out, and a big catalyst that I'm finding for people moving out at the moment from East London is they've got children who are at primary school, and they deem the primary school to be fine. Nothing wrong with the primary school in East London. But for secondary schools, they're actually wanting their children to be out of the capital. So when the kids are 7, 8, more like 8, 9, 10, then they're wanting to move because they're wanting to get their kids into the right area or the right school for their secondary school.
Are you hearing any complaints around the levels of immigration in London that's causing people to leave and move out to the country?
I've got one who I can think of who's moving to the north of England because he wants space and likes surfing, and he feels London's got quite crowded. And he wants a more quieter, genteel environment for his young family moving forward. So I guess, yeah.
Do you feel safe living in London?
Jesus, I don't think I've ever been asked that. Do I feel safe in 100%? Yeah, I feel safe in London.
Really?
Yeah. Do I like everything that I see in London? No. But do I feel safe in London? Yeah, I do. But I'm not going. I'm a boring middle-aged man. I rock and roll Saturday night, and I'll still be in bed for midnight. I'm not. You won't find me in the West End at 3:00 in the morning. So I'm maybe hanging out or doing things that others might. I don't know. Would I walk around? I feel comfortable. Having said that, I've got a teenage daughter who's 13 and thinking about, will I be happy with her getting the tube into Oxford Street or something like that and wandering around? No, I won't be overly happy or comfortable. It's something that I would have done when I was 13, 14, but it is a different world now. But I suppose you've got to give some sort of let them off the leash a bit. But yeah, London can be, if you're not living in London, I think the feeling of London is it's the big bad world, and it can be dangerous and things happen. But yeah, there have been instances. Maybe I'm just naive. There's been instances where I've seen on the BBC London News about a stabbing in a certain tower block in London. And I was like, God, I know it there. I was there 3 weeks ago. It's perfectly, I was fine there when I walked around at 11:00 on a Tuesday morning. Maybe what goes on there, at 11:00 on a Saturday night might be something different. But I've always felt very safe and comfortable in London. Bear in mind, I grew up in a city where they were throwing bombs at each other. So,
there is that.
The army was on the streets. And all the police had guns. So, yeah, London doesn't have that.
So as we start thinking about wrapping up, Simon, we're already, it's just, I haven't even been able to tell you about my other sideline venture that I'm extremely excited about. We're gonna get to that. I just want to ask you just a couple of questions, and then we'll get onto that. So, we've been talking about your business. We've been talking about where you've got to, this big social media following that you've grown. You're obviously doing great things. You're going to go on and build even bigger things. And we'll, follow up into that after this one. I'm just interested if you could go back to, 21-year-old, Simon Taylor, what would you do different to what you've done with this business? Let's say you was building this business as a 21-year-old. Would you do anything different?
Great question. I suppose when I left Proper Bricks and came to the realization that I needed to do my own thing, I was starting everything from scratch. So I was starting my social media journey from scratch. And I suppose if I was 21, I would still be, I think 21 to do this is probably still, I think, a little bit young. I think you need a few more miles on the clock of life experience, not necessarily property experience, but life experience before going out on your own as a self-employed estate agent. But one thing you can do if you are working in a corporate or an independent estate agency office or branch or business is, and this I guess applies to anybody in any industry that is employed but wants to maybe one day do their own thing. So build your social media journey now. So give yourself plenty of runway so that when you do decide to spread your wings and fly and do your own thing, you've got credibility, you've got experience, you can showcase, you've got examples of work that you've done, you're showing pedigree and stuff that you've been doing, your portfolio really. Whereas when I started from a cold start, I really was starting from a cold start. So having that head start, I think would give you, could accelerate your growth and give you an advantage over the way that I did it, which was more, should we say, gung ho.
Yeah, great advice. Social media, and it's only going to grow as we progress, right, with technology, and it's the future. So really,
yeah.
Really good advice.
Don't shy away from promoting and talking about what you're doing for you in the company that you're working at. Obviously, you need to check it over with them and do it in a way that makes you look good, but also is done in a fashion that makes your employer shows them in a good light too. But yeah, you just wanted to give yourself that head start, really.
Okay, so let's let the cat out the bag. What's the big announcement that Simon's building next
big announcement. I tell you what it is, right? Do you know how they say there's a housing crisis in the UK, and they say that we need to build more homes?
Labour's going to fix all that overnight.
Of course they are.
Didn't you know?
Of course they are. And they want to build on the green belt and build on people's right. And I'm thinking, right, okay, that's great. But do you know there are over 300,000 empty homes in England, 300,000 empty homes in England alone. I'm not talking about holiday homes down in Cornwall. I'm talking about neglected, abandoned, not used, long-term empty homes. By being long-term empty, I mean empty for more than 12 months, just sitting there. That's
before you've even mentioned office blocks and everything.
I'm not even talking about office blocks. I'm talking about empty, abandoned homes. There are more empty and abandoned homes in England than there are homeless people.
Wow.
So why are we talking about building new builds when we should maybe be fixing up and utilising our existing housing stock? No planning permissions necessary. It's often just a case of new kitchen, new bathroom, new wiring, redecorating. So much easier than building a new house. So the business that I founded with some investors is a business called Empty Property Hunters, where we crowdsource. We ask members of the public to crowdsource empty properties in their area. So nobody knows their area better than them. Maybe you walk the dog, maybe you walk to the station, maybe there's a house that you're thinking, what on earth is going on there? That car's not moved off the drive for years, or that garden's been overgrown for as long as I can remember, or the curtains have never opened in that house since as long as I've lived in the area. Everybody knows of a house a little bit like that in their area. So we're incentivizing members of the public to get out their phone, take a picture, send the address in to emptypropertyhunters.co.uk. And we've got a research and tracing team that have some amazing tools at their disposal, and they can try and trace the owner. And if it's verified as being empty for 12 months or more, the person that sent it in gets 20 quid, even if we don't buy the house. And then if we are able to successfully agree a purchase with the owner who says, yes, I haven't lived there. Yes, it is subject to requirements. Yes, I would like to actually sell it. If we can agree a sale, then that person who sent in the lead, on top of the 20 quid, gets 1% of the value of the property. So we're just trying to, there's 300,000 empty homes in the UK, as I've said. We're trying to do between 50 and 100 per annum. That's the goal that we've set. We've got financing there for that. I kind of feel that the lessons that I've learned from negotiation, from being in agency and the world of valuing a property and knowing the market and knowing a little bit about social media, and my tenure at Purple Bricks in terms of customer service, I think is going to stand us in good stead for the world of this empty property hunters, where it is a real problem. These houses are blighting areas. It's criminal that they're not being that they're underutilized or not being utilized at all. So it's doing well, and circa 400 leads are coming in per month, and most of that is through organic and paid advertising on social media.
That's a really, really good idea and a great business plan. Massive need for that. You win, the economy wins, people searching for first homes win. So ticks all the boxes. I like it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's been absolutely amazing, Simon. Really, really good conversation. So much great advice and information around how to build a brand. Some stuff that maybe you don't see as being so valuable, but just talking about the importance of consistency and being different and being honest and being who you are and not overthinking things. These are all things that are, I'm sure going to help a lot of people out there to get started. And, if they can get to, 10% of where you are, then, it'll be a big success. So really, really appreciate all of your tips and advice. So we're going to put all of Simon's information in the show notes, all of his handles for his social media platforms. Go and follow Simon. Go and check out his content and what he's doing to get inspired, especially if you're in the same space. Maybe you can steal some of his ideas. And even if you're not in the same space, use it for inspiration as to what you can do on social media. So, Simon, really, really appreciate the time. I know you're a busy man, and look forward to watching you continue to grow your business and now businesses. So good luck.
Thanks, Alex. Likewise. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. And thank you for everybody for listening and watching at home. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Airbnb Nomads podcast. Until then, take care. Goodbye.